Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God, back with you with the next video in my series reading The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Without further ado, returning to The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn as read by Lord Naren White. I didn't lose no time. The next minute I was a-spinning downstream soft but quick in the shade of the bank. I made 2.5 miles and then struck out 1/4 mile or more towards the middle of the river, because pretty soon I would be passing the ferry landing, and people might see me and hail me. I got out amongst the driftwood, and then laid down in the bottom of the canoe and let her float. I laid there, and had a good rest and a smoke out of my pipe, looking away into the sky. Not a cloud in it. The sky looks ever so deep when you lay down your back in the moonshine. I never noted before. And how far a body can hear on the water such nights. I heard people talking at the ferry landing. I heard what they said, too, every word of it. One man said it was getting towards the long days and the short nights now. The other one said this weren't one of the short ones, he reckoned, and then laughed. And he said it over again, and they laughed again. Then they waked up another fellow and told him, and laughed, but he didn't laugh. He ripped out something brisk, and said, let him alone. The first fellow said Lo, to tell it to his old woman. She would think it was pretty good. But he said there weren't nothing to some things he had said. Let me read that again. The first fellow said Lo, to tell it to his old woman. She would think it was pretty good. But he said that weren't nothing to some things he had said in his time. I heard one man say it was nearly 3 o'clock, and he hoped daylight wouldn't wait more than about a week longer. After that, the talk got further and further away, and I couldn't make out the words any more. But I could hear the mumble, and now and then a laugh, too. But it seemed a long ways off. I was away below the ferry now. I rose up, and there was Jackson's Island, about 2.5 miles downstream, heavy timbered and standing up out of the middle of the river, big and dark and solid, like a steamboat without any lights. There weren't any signs of the bar at the head, and it was all under water now. It didn't take me long to get there. I shot past the head at a ripping rate. The current was so swift, and then I got into the dead water and landed on the side toward the Illinois shore. I run the canoe into a deep dent in the bank that I knowed about. I had to part the willow branches to get in, and when I made fast, nobody could have seen the canoe from outside. I went up and sat down on a log at the head of the island, and looked out on the big river and the black driftwood and away over the town to the town. 3 mile away, where there was 3 or 4 lights twinkling, a monstrous big lumber raft was about 1 mile upstream, coming along down, with a lantern in the middle of it. I watched it come creeping down when it was the most abreast of where I stood. I heard a man say, "Stern oars there! Heave her to stab board!" I heard that just as plain as if the man was by my side. There was a little gray in the sky now, so I stepped into the woods and lay down for a nap before breakfast. Chapter 8. The sun was up so high when I waked that I judged it was after 8 o'clock. I laid there in the grass and the cool shade thinking about things, and feeling rested and rather comfortable and satisfied. I could see the sun out at 1 or 2 holes, but mostly it was big trees all about, and gloomy in there amongst them. There was freckled places on the ground where the light sifted down through the leaves, and the freckled places swapped about a little, showing there was a little breeze up there. A couple of squirrels sat on a limb and jabbered at me very friendly. I was powerful, lazy, and comfortable. Didn't want to get up and cook breakfast. Well, I was dozing again when I think I hears a deep sound of boom away up the river. I rouses up and rests on my elbows and listens. Pretty soon I hears it again. I hopped up and went and looked out a hole in the leaves, and I see a bunch of smoke laying on the water a long ways up, about abreast of the ferry, and there was the ferry boat full of people floating along down. I knowed what was the matter now. Boom! I see the white smoke squirt out of the ferryboat's side. You see, they was firing cannon over the water, trying to make my carcass come to the top. I was pretty hungry, but I weren't going to do for me to start a fire, because they might see the smoke. So I sat there and watched the cannon smoke and listened to the boom. The river was a mile wide there, and it always looks pretty on a summer morning. So I was having a good enough time to seeing them hunt for my remainders if I only had a bite to eat. Well, then I happened to think how they always put quicksilver in loaves of bread and float them off, because they always go right to the drowned carcass and stop there. So, says I, I'll keep a lookout, and if any of them's floating around after me, I'll give them a show. I changed to the Illinois edge of the island to see what luck I could have, and I weren't disappointed. A big double loaf come along, and I most got it with a long stick, but my foot slipped and she floated out further. Of course, I was where the current set in the closest to the shore. I knowed enough for that. But by and by along comes another one, and this time I won. I took the plug and shook out the little dab of quicksilver and set my teeth in. It was baker's bread, with the quality eat, none of your low-down corn pone. I got a good place amongst the leaves and sat there on a log, munching the bread and watching the ferryboat, and very well satisfied. And then something struck me. I says, now I reckon the widow or the parson or somebody prayed that this bread would find me, and here it has gone and done it. So there ain't no doubt but there is something in that thing. That is, there's something in it when a body like the widow or the parson prays, but it don't work for me. And I reckon it don't work for only just the right kind. I lit a pipe and had a good long smoke and went on watching. The ferry boat was floating along with the current, and I allowed, and I'd have a chance to see who was abroad when she came along, because she would come in close where the bread did. When she got pretty well along down towards me, I put out my pipe and went to where I fished out the bread, and laid down behind a log on the bank in a little open place. When the log forked, I could peep through. By and by she come along, and she drifted in so close that they could run out a plank and walked ashore. Most everybody was on the boat. Pap and Judge Thatcher and Bessie Thatcher and Joe Harper and Tom Sawyer and his old Aunt Polly and Sid and Mary and plenty more. Everybody was talking about the murder, but the captain broke in and says, "Look sharp now. The current sets in the closest here, and maybe he's washed ashore and got tangled amongst the brush at the water's edge. I hope so, anyway." I didn't hope so. They all crowded and leaned over the rails nearly in my face and kept still with all their might. I couldn't see them first rate, but they couldn't see me. Then the captain sung out, "Stand away!" And the cannon let off with such a blast right before me that it made me deaf with the noise and pretty near blind with the smoke, and I judged I was gone. If they'd a had some bullets in, I reckon they'd a got the corpse they was after. Well, I see I weren't hurt, thanks to goodness. The boat floated on and went out of sight among the shoulder of the island. I could hear the booming now and then, further and further off, and by, after an hour, I didn't hear it no more. The island was 3 miles long. I judged they had got to the foot and was giving it up. But they didn't yet a while. They turned around the foot of the island and started up the channel on the Missouri side under steam, and booming once in a while as they went. I crossed over to that side and watched them. When they got abreast the head of the island, they quit shooting and dropped over to the Missouri shore and went home to the town. I knowed I was all right now. Nobody else would come a-hunting after me. I got my traps out of the canoe and made me a nice camp in the thick woods. I made a kind of tent out of my blankets to put my things under so the rain couldn't get at them. I catched a catfish and haggled him open with my saw, and towards sundown I started my campfire and had supper. Then I set out a line to catch some fish for my breakfast. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.